Well, hey there, my name is Robert, family pastor here at Calvary, and this is your word for the day. We've been going through the book of Nehemiah the last few days, talking about what it took for Nehemiah to lead the people of God to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. But we've seen through this that it was about more than just building walls. It was about rebuilding their lives, their faith, their trust and obedience to God through this process as well. Now, if you've ever built something, especially repaired something, you know there's tons of hurdles that come along the way. Plenty of head-scratching moments and extra trips to the hardware store. And Nehemiah encountered this, but as we look at chapter 4 today, things get a little bit more intense for Nehemiah and his teams. And as we look at chapter 4, Nehemiah is greeted by some, well, let's just call them onlookers who have some thoughts on the project. So listen along, chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. It says, "Now when Sanballat heard that they were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. He said in the presence of his brothers in the army of Samaria, 'What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish, the burned ones at that?'" It says, "Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him and said, 'Yes, what are they building? If a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall.'" Nice and optimistic, huh? How would you like to be Nehemiah in that moment, hearing that kind of opposition to the hard work he had been doing? See, the statements made of him are important, but what's even more important is how he responded. So keep reading with me. It says this in verse 4. Nehemiah says, "Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt upon their own heads and give them up to be plundered in the land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt. Do not let their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders." So we built the wall, and the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Now Nehemiah's response to the mocking, the jeering, the criticism, and prayer was continued dedication to God's work. He didn't even respond to their statements. He didn't even reply to these critics, but instead took his thoughts directly to God. And this is important because it was his prayer and his dedication to God that allowed him to be in this place of leadership to begin with. And it was the thing that would carry him through it. So for you today, understand that whenever you try to make progress in your life, you will hear voices of accusation, voices of criticism, voices of condemnation hurled at you. Now, these voices may be of people you know. They may be of people who have hurt and opposed you in the past, or these voices may come from within and inside you. But know that God's call in your life is greater than any opposition you will face. God's desire for you is for you to follow and honor Him with your life. And however He has called you to do that is far greater than the approval or opposition of people. But you have to remember to rely on His strength, not your own, to weather and endure that battle. So if you're experiencing opposition in your life today, take that to God. Go to Him in prayer and ask Him for help and guidance and relief in that. And if there are voices in your life speaking doubt and condemnation and criticism, bring those to God, who will fill you with hope and encouragement and determination. But that's not the end of this chapter, even this situation for Nehemiah, because those two onlookers didn't appreciate what had happened and the fact that Nehemiah built even stronger. And they start to war against the Israelites who were building. And the Jews became scared of the violence. They became worn out from defending themselves and working at the same time. And so Nehemiah comes up with a plan and begins to communicate what his plan was. He has this moment where he gives a talk, kind of like a halftime pep talk in the locker room. And he says this in verse 14. He says, "And I looked and arose and saw the nobles and said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, 'Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes.'" Nehemiah found courage in the strength to face his opponents by remembering that his God was greater than their opposition. So today, I don't know what opposition you're facing. Maybe the verbal opposition of the people in your life trying to tear you down like it was for Nehemiah. It may be the opposition of trying to rebuild your finances or your business in response to the COVID situation. It may be the opposition of trying to overcome a battle with addiction or a chronic sin struggle. As you do that, it might be easy to be overwhelmed and burdened by the work ahead of you. It may be easy to have those setbacks just weigh on you and tear you down. But hear the words of Nehemiah in your life today. Don't be afraid of the opposition, but instead remember the Lord. Remember His goodness. Remember His great works in your life. Remember His faithfulness. Remember His power to change and transform you. Remember that God loves you. Remember that God can give you the strength that you need. Remember that in the end, God has the victory. See, my prayer for all of you watching today is that you would not live in fear or shame or concern because of your opposition, but that you would remember the Lord and follow in His instructions because He is a great and awesome God. Now, this week we've been talking about spending some intentional time in prayer today on Friday. And I hope that you do that. I hope that you carve some time away and say, I'm going to spend time in intentional prayer, maybe even choose to fast today as you seek God and seek to build your life and your faith even stronger with Him. And as you do that, our prayer is that your life would be changed and transformed. So I hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.